Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. This is the League Two podcast, and this evening we're talking about the relegation dogfight. And I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Jack Groom from the Shrews Analysis. Jack, thanks so much for joining us. Green shoots of recovery for the sell-up recently?
Hi, Gabby. Yeah, thanks for having me on as always. Yeah, I think so. Obviously, what's that? 5 games unbeaten now, I think. 3 away from home, 2 at home. So from where we were before that, definitely much more positivity around the place, which is good. Even some fireworks going off in the background there to celebrate our recent run of form as well. So yeah, things looking up. Not counting our chickens just yet, but certainly a lot better than it was.
Yeah, certainly are. I suppose if I look at the 11, probably the one thing that you maybe do have in your favour is experienced centre halves who are proven at this level, like Sam Stubbs. And Will Boyle, they've both actually played well at Cheltenham before. Stubbs did well last season, and Will Boyle a bit longer ago under Michael Duff. But I suppose I'm not sure they're necessarily the best ball-playing centre halves, and I don't know whether they suit Appleton's style. But as long as you're not asking a huge amount of them in the sort of progressive sense, I think they're very good centre halves at this level. I'm wondering if that's started to show recently.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of the season itself for the club, it's a season to kind of take stock and consolidate. And the 3 centre halves that we signed in the summer were on paper perfect signings to do that, to handle the kind of the rough and tumble of League Two, not necessarily going to pass teams to death, but a good solid players that kind of a platform can be built upon. And in the past few weeks, that's been the case. A lot of that good form was with Luca Hall in the back three as well, rather than Tom Anderson when he was injured, and that kind of gave us a bit more pace at the back line to help as well. But certainly Stubbs and Boyle are 2 players that have done pretty well so far this season. I think there's still a few question marks around Anderson, I'll be honest with you, but the other 2 have done well, and they're seemingly, one of the first names on the team sheet now. Boyle's obviously popped up with a couple of goals as well, important goals, which is always good and always important. And hopefully, if we can keep that, decent kind of defensive foundation and build upon that, it will hopefully only lead to good things in the next few weeks and months.
Do you have genuine optimism? Because I had a little bit of concern around Shrewsbury before the season, whether Appleton was the right fit for the stage that Shrewsbury Town are at as a club right now, and maybe the compatibility aspect. Obviously, there's, probably the first couple of months did nothing to sort of sway me away from that because it was a bit of a struggle. What do you think's changed in the last month or so?
I think we had a bit of luck, first of all. The win at home to Cambridge, bit of a fortunate first goal, which we needed. It was the first time we'd scored at home. Sorry, scored first in a game so far this season, which was really important and had been spoken about a lot before that. And then in the Crawley game as well, I think a red card for Harry McCurdy at Crawley, another goal from a corner. So just a bit of luck, but also being able to capitalise upon that as well. I think the team up until that point had been pretty poor. There hadn't been many good performances to kind of write home about, but it's seemingly now we've been able to capitalise on that little bit of luck. Even away at Oldham, the performance wasn't the best, and I know it was disappointing to concede so late on, having scored so late. But I think getting out of that game with a point, that we'd have lost that game a couple of months ago. So hopefully the team's just starting to become a bit more savvy, a bit more know-how about them, and actually capitalise upon that. Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I must say, from the outside, I do look at a midfield pairing of Taylor Perry and Tom Sang and feel a little bit underwhelmed. I don't think they're sort of terrible footballers at this level, but I wouldn't necessarily rate them enormously highly either. What have you made of them, kind of watching them week in, week out?
I think Perry's someone who's done well so far this season and a bit last season as well. Sang has probably disappointed, I'll be honest with you, so far, coming from a team that got promoted last season. He was someone who I spoke to a few Port Vale fans that I know, and they said as soon as we signed him, he's not a centre midfielder. So as soon as he was played in there, that did kind of raise my eyebrow a little bit to see if that was the case. And in my opinion, I don't think he's a centre midfielder. He's done a job, but even in the good performances against Crawley and Cambridge, he was certainly the weakest link. I think getting Josh Ruffles in will hopefully help that, whether that's Josh Ruffles playing in centre mid as he did at the weekend, or Sam Clucas going inside and Ruffles to left wing back. I think Perry deserves to keep his place, but I think if Sang was to lose his place, he couldn't really have too many complaints. So he's someone who probably needs to improve a little bit. I know he scored at the weekend against South Shields, which hopefully will do him some good confidence-wise. But yeah, it's not the most exciting pairing on paper you're going to see in League Two, but I think at the minute it's been functional for us, and with players around him like Tommy McDermott, Ishmael Cabia, Scully, people like that, to give that bit more creativity. They've done a job so far, but I think we can still certainly improve in that area, and for Sang in particular as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Ishmael Cabia because he's the one on loan from Arsenal that probably has caught my eye in a struggling team. Has he brought that bit of an outlet, something to relieve the pressure on the rest of the team?
Yeah, definitely. Early on in the season, the team had no pace. It was, it was bland. There was no excitement. There was no skill going forwards, really. And Cabby has been the player to certainly kind of drag the team along with that, with his style. His attitude is second to none. He's been put to right wing back the past few weeks. He does the dirty side really well. He defends. He gets stuck in. He works hard. And I think Appleton said he's a delight to have around the place, and he expects him to go to the top. And I would concur with that. I'll be honest with you. He's someone who, for his first loan spell out in league football, has really stood out, not just for his pace, because we all knew that he was going to be quick and have good technical ability, but for his willingness to get stuck in and to really graft is something that I've been really impressed with. So he's given us that outlet in behind defences, which we needed because we had none of. But he's also allowed us to just defend a little bit higher up as well because of his pace on recovery runs backwards too. There was a few kind of question marks around if he was having it right wing back, would it kind of limit him and would it prevent him from being as effective as he potentially could be? But he's certainly done really well. And in fairness, he's done well in every role he's played this season. He's played wide of a front three. He's played in a front two. He's played just behind the strikers. He's gone to right wing back, and he's done well in every role. And he's someone who we certainly will hope to to keep fit for the rest of the season. Because I think if we were to lose him, it would significantly harm us as a team.
Yeah, Cabia certainly a name that's doing well in League Two this season with obviously Jays at Grimsby. I'm just wondering, Jack, you've always struck me as quite a realistic Town fan, and whenever you felt quite pessimistic about the club, you've not been afraid to sort of say that. But the way you're talking at the moment, you sound reasonably hopeful that things are going to stabilise and you're going to climb the table from this point onwards.
I think there's reasons to be hopeful, which there wasn't earlier on in the campaign. Keeping Cabby fit, keeping Scully fit as well. People that can actually, do damage in the opponent's defensive third is really, really important. And having those players available to us will give us that chance. The team does seem to be progressing a bit, and it does seem to have progressed on from earlier on in the season, which gives hope that we can keep doing well. But because of how bad the first, 6-8 weeks of the season we're always playing catch up. So I'd be surprised if we ever get to a point this season where we're definitively safe and are kind of in mid-table mediocrity. I think we'll always have one eye over our shoulder for the rest of the season because of the starting point we've had. But I would like to think with the team we've got, certainly at the minute, it's got enough about it to stay in the division. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to be, all kind of fireworks and champagne football for the rest of the season, but I think there's enough there now to get enough victories and to start clawing up the division.
Yeah, just fireworks where you are. Maybe not quite yet at the Meadow. Well, Jack, thanks so much for talking to us, and look forward to speaking again later in the season.
Cheers, Gav. Thanks for having me, mate. Speak soon.
Top man. So my next guest is Mr. Callum Gibson of Accrington Stanley, the raw milk zine. Lovely to have you on, Callum. Thanks so much for joining us. Accrington Stanley just seemed to be this team. I felt it last season as well, Callum. The team that you could be worried about after 3 or 4 games, where you might go winless, and then you just seem to be able to pull out these mad results like thumping Swindon 4-0 and winning at MK Dons. And you're a bit of a mad team this season.
Yeah, it's always been the case. Every kind of 4 or 5 games, we'll get one of those mad results, and hopefully that'll just be enough to see us over the line with a few more draws. But that Swindon result, it's quite funny, really. It's always the game that you can't get to, isn't it? Because I went the weekend before against Newport, who hadn't won in 11 games and were rock bottom at home. We didn't have a shot on target until the 85th minute. And I said to Brett Ormrod that calling it a game would have got you in trouble off the Trade Descriptions Act. We were that bad. And I also made the comment that, the Crown Ground used to be a fortress and now it's become an Airbnb for away teams. But to go from that to the game I can't make, thumping, high-flying Swindon 4-0 is typical of my Stanley experience, really. I was at MK, though, and we did play very well that day. So we do have... It is just that every team says it, but it is just the consistency. On our day, we're not terrible. Like we can give teams a scare, especially at home. And hopefully, like you say, you just hope we're consistently inconsistent enough to stay up.
Yeah, one thing that's struck me about this 11, Callum, is that it's quite an attacking team. Like you've got Charlie Brown, right wing back, who came through, was quite highly rated at Cheltenham, and then has since struggled at MK Dons and Cheltenham to sort of translate that into Football League terms. And he used to be a number 10 or a withdrawn forward, and now he's playing as an attacking wing back. And then you've got Isaac Heath, I think, on loan from Everton on the other side. So that's two quite attacking bits for wing back, to say that you've also got two attacking midfielders and a striker, Paddy Madden, up top. For small club, limited, it's quite an attacking approach on paper for the situation that you find yourselves in.
Yeah, I think we need to score goals because we don't keep many clean sheets. We have to go out to attack, especially at home, and we're quite a good counter-attacking side away from home as well. Good to see Paddy Madden clicking now with that hat-trick against Swindon, because he was a bit of a coup. Everyone was really excited when we signed him, and obviously with lack of fitness and things, it's taken him a while to kind of get up to speed, but scored again on Sunday in the Cup, so he's coming to form now. I would say Isaac Heath is having a very good season, attacking wise. Ted, as I like to call him, one for the younger listeners there.
What's the reference there?
Ted Heath was a former Prime Minister many years ago.
Okay, you've exposed my lack of political knowledge.
Yeah.
Go back anything to Callahan. I'm very.
No, you're okay. Yeah, it's not a great reference. But Sean Morley's obviously the key again. I've had this conversation with you time and time again, and in 10 years we'll probably be having the same conversation, because Sean Morley's evergreen. We're just such a much better side when he plays. Like he got his goal the other day against Tranmere on his comeback from injury. Kind of ran the game until he had to go off with an understandable lack of fitness. Hit the post again on Sunday at Gainsborough. He's kind of filled that role that McConville used to have for us, where if he turns up, the team turn up.
Yeah.
So we need to keep him fit. If we're going to achieve anything this year, we need to keep Sean Morley fit. And Seamus Keneally again, for somebody who was released and came back, he only kind of cameos now, but again, still one of our best players. Whenever he comes on and slows the game down. So
in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, just the old the Irish 2 guy, just sprays it around. But yeah, you're right. We do try and attack, and we do kind of try and have a go, because I think we need to, especially at home. The Crown Ground, as I say, has always been a fortress. I think it's one of the things you trade off as you kind of improve the infrastructure. So when we had like the old cowshed and the cold water dressing rooms and the potato field for a pitch, not for want of trying, it was always a bit of a leveler. And it was kind of, Billy Key used to say it was worth 10 points a season. Teams turned up and they were beaten. Whereas now it's a bowling green. The facilities are nice. The new stand's nice. It's anything you would expect from kind of a mid-table League 2 team, really.
Interesting. Yeah, so you've taken some of it's more welcoming in a good way, but also in a sort of not quite as raucous or as earthy maybe as it was previously.
I would say so.
I wanted to ask you about the back three, Callum, because Devon Matthews, who I know is very highly rated among the Clayton Enders, Farron Rawson and Ben Ward, they're all at the club last season, although Rawson had a spell out of the team at the back end of the season. It was the lad on loan from Man United who was starting, but relatively speaking, they've got a bit of an understanding between them. Has it looked that way on the pitch, or have you looked quite susceptible defensively?
I think we're not keeping that many clean sheets, but Devon Matthews, as you just mentioned, then has been very reliable for us. It's a case of kind of they're 3 excellent players, but whether they're a coherent unit quite yet, I'm not quite sure. Seem to get done for pace quite a lot, but Devon Matthews, again, as you say, I would say, quite ironically, in the week where Ross Sykes scored against Atletico Madrid.
I know, I was thrilled. I was thrilled for him. Yeah,
Devon Matthews might be the new, Ross Sykes, and go on to bigger and better things, I think.
Fingers crossed for that. What do you think about Accrington Stanley's chances then, Callum? Because in terms of staying up, because you do have that ability that we've spoken about to pull a surprise out of nowhere, and actually at times you do look like a reasonable footballing side considering the budgetary limitations that you're working with. But you can also go. I'm not sure I've seen you really string together some form this season. So, what are your thoughts?
I think we'll do well to stay up. I think last season, the form we were in, we were very lucky, really, that the kind of, Carlisle didn't turn up until the last 10 games, and Morecambe had kind of a season from hell. So there was, there were two. They were always adrift, weren't they? It wasn't as though there was a chase. So we weren't really we were under pressure, but we weren't really. It was kind of comfortable in the end. Whereas this season, there doesn't look to be that kind of whipping boy from the teams we've played anyway.
Agreed.
So yeah, I'm just looking for two worse teams. We're either really good or really terrible. There's no kind of middle of the road performances. We'll get hammered off your Barnets and Newports, but then we'll turn Swindon over. It's just whether we can get enough of those wins. We get 1 in 4 or 5 at the moment. I would say you need close to kind of 1 in 3 of those performances, really, if you're going to comfortably stay up. I think we'll be all right. I think we'll find 2 worse teams, but it does depend massively. With the problem we've got is a small squad. It's quite it's a squad where the quality is spread very thin. So a few key injuries, as I said, Worley. It's been very noticeable with Worley out how bad we've been, Madden, etc. And also one thing people forget now, we just touched on Ross Sykes, is we don't have an academy anymore. One of, I think, only 2 of the 92 not to have an academy, which is a rant for another day. But it does help with bodies. You can get people. You can put a few academy players on the bench. You can blood them in the Football League trophy and things like that. So
I remember you brought in, like in your last season in League One, you brought in people like Beckles and lads from the academy when there was a shortage. Whereas now it's much harder to do that. Yeah,
I mean, we've been spoilt really. I was looking back at some of those League One sides that we had, and they just oozed quality like 1 to 11. It's unreal to think that in the last 5-6 years we had a side that flirted with the League One playoffs. Just 2 or 3 of those players would snap your hand off for now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
A lot of them gone on to do, as we said, bigger and better things. I don't see that kind of quality in the team now. I don't see kind of 2018 league romping quality. The budget has been cut again. I think the aim now is just to stay in the league, which, although that is the aim, it kind of...
It's not very fun. It's not very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, so with the Morecambe manager, and he said, our aim is to be one of the best footballing teams in the country. And as a fan, that's nonsense, but you kind of like to hear it. You know what I mean? So it's like...
Well, I think there's something between we can only stay up and we want to be the best footballing team in the country. It's sort of being a bit more aspirational.
Yeah, just a case of, you say the aim is to kind of, see where we go, and we'd like to flirt with the playoffs and things like that. I think if you're telling people from the outset the aim is to stay up, there just seems to be a friend of mine, Ash Seed, he said there just seems to be a disconnect really between the team, the board, the players. Not in a nasty, set fire to the board way. It's just a very kind of like passive, slow malaise. Gates are dwindling, and people are kind of, spending the game, gripped to their accumulator rather than watching because there's nothing exciting happening on the pitch. And it just, you just don't want to be that kind of death by 1,000 cuts, if that makes sense. Which is why it's so important we won on Sunday in the cup, because that keeps a bit of interest alive, and also very importantly financially. We need that money. We needed it. So I'd like to see a bit more kind of ambition maybe shown by certain aspects of the club. But I'm sure
or at least feel like this is the other thing I would say. I think Accrington Stanley fans are realistic enough to know that they're up against it. I think it'd be an insult to say otherwise, but I think you want to feel like there's a vision of, if we can develop enough players here, we're going to try and make a big sale and then reinvest that money and try and get a bit further up the budgetary rank, and feel like there's a vision to work towards something. So I think that's probably what
no one's expecting us to bring home the treble, but when you see similar sized teams, you see your Burtons and your Wickhams and things like that having a go, and it does think, well, we can do it, and we have done it. That's the thing, we have done it in recent history. We were an established mid-table League One team where if we'd spent a few more pounds at the right time of the season, we'd probably still be there. But it's just that kind of, there's a kind of feeling that things are starting to slide and go in reverse, and things feel to me very much like that period between, I would say, 2006 to about 2010, 11, were just staying up with the goal.
I thought that was a bit more exciting because you're new to the EFL in
the
4
novelty.
years or whatever.
Yeah.
So that makes a difference. Listen, Callum, it's been great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on and catch up with you later in the season.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers. We will be joined by Ed from the 1912 Exiles podcast of Newport County, but for now I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. John Palmer of the Gloucestershire Echo. Hi, John.
Hi, Gab. How are you? All right?
There we go. We got there in the end.
Too much Accrington chat, I think, froze my screen, so sorry about that.
Sorry about that. Well, good to have you on. You must be pretty optimistic about Cheltenham, given the start to the season that you've had.
Well, certainly the last few games, I think they've gone from having the worst start in the club's League Two history to now really optimistically looking up the table, and it's just taken a few games. Some clean sheets, some hard fought wins, but it's it's incredible the difference a few weeks has made since we last chatted. The Steve Cottrell effect, and I think most Cheltenham fans would now say they're very confident Cheltenham will not be in the relegation battle this season, which is an incredible turnaround, isn't it? When you think about they were on 4 points before Cottrell came in, just lost 7-1 at Grimsby, to now be looking at who they can reel in now. It's been an incredible turn. I don't think there'll be any complacency, but I think there's a real confidence that it will be a league football in Cheltenham next season, definitely.
One thing that I'm really excited about, I always think whenever Cheltenham are at their best, they have a stable group of players and they've got relationships between them. And whenever Cheltenham are at their worst, it's, you're going from one player to another. And I do look at the Cheltenham team from the early weeks of Cottrell's return, and you can sort of name the 11 and they've got that understanding straight away. And that's the big positive for me. Yeah,
very settled. He's gone with 4-3-3 with Ben Stevenson, who's made such a big difference playing just in front of the back four. He's been outstanding. What a signing, to be a free agent at that stage of the season. And Cottrell made him his first signing. He's been excellent. Player of the month for October. That's allowed Luke Young and Isaac Hutchinson to have a lot more freedom. So that works well as a midfield three. You've got Archer and now fit again Jordan Thomas on the wings. Jake Bickerstaff's working incredibly hard up front. Hasn't scored yet, but really putting in a shift for the team, and he's allowed the likes of Young and Bickerstaff to threaten goals. And the back four's also been pretty solid with Wilson. They've had a lot of problems with centre backs. Bennett, Cundy, Mazionis all having injury problems. Wilson had an injury problem, but now you've got Sheringham and Wilson at centre back have been rock solid, particularly against Bradford on Saturday. Absolutely outstanding to shut them out under considerable pressure. Jonathan Tompkinson's come in at left back, not his natural position, but's been absolutely solid there as well. And Arkel Dewboyd at right back. It's been a settled 4-3-3 with Joe Day's been also in good form in goal, and he's made some changes from the bench. The likes of Kinsella has had a say. Tom Taylor's made a good impact on low from Ipswich, but that starting 11, like you said, it's very difficult to break into that at the moment, which shows how well they're working, how well they're playing.
Certainly does. I imagine with the fullbacks, Tompkinson's a centre half by trade, as you mentioned. Arkell Boyd, a sort of a right back, but with very attacking instincts. We've seen previously he can play on the right wing. So I imagine there's a big emphasis on AJB to really get forward and combine with Jordan Thomas and maybe Tompkinson to tuck in, perhaps.
Yeah, Tompkinson he looks like I just wonder how good he's going to be when he actually starts to play in his, if he does get a chance to play in his favourite positions, because he's done so well at left back, even though he's a right-footed centre back. And I think that shows again the quality of the player and the adaptability and the athleticism that he's brought to the team. So been really impressed with him. He's, like you said, he's less likely to maraud down the left wing, being right-footed and being primarily there to stop other players, but he's certainly given Ethan Archer plenty of freedom, and Jude Boyd has got forward. I'd say he didn't have the best start to the season. I don't want to single him out because not many players did, but he's certainly showing signs of getting back to his best now. I say Archer as well has been rejuvenated since Steve Cotterill came in, and he seems to have given everyone a bit of belief, bit of organisation, bit of extra fitness, and it's been remarkable. It's just something about Steve Cotterill and Cheltenham Town that it just fits. It's been unrecognisable from a few weeks ago. It really has.
Yeah, he gets the spirit, doesn't he, of the club? And one thing I've always noticed, it's easy to look at it the romantic side of it, John, isn't it? Because of the 23 years since he was last managing Cheltenham Town, and the club legend, and got the club into the Football League, and 3 promotions and 1 FA Trophy. But also, you can't ignore the fact as well that he's since managed in League One and the Championship. He hasn't even managed lower than League One since leaving Cheltenham Town for the Stoke City job in 2002. So even if you're looking at it from more of a sort of logical standpoint rather than an emotional one, it's even a good appointment then. And I love the way that he's a real commander general on the touchline, Steve Cotterill.
He certainly is, and you're right. He's been at every level. He's managed in Ireland. He's managed in the Southern League and Conference when he was learning the ropes. He's taken Cheltenham into League Two, and then obviously left as they moved up to League One. And some of the clubs he's been at since have been huge clubs with immense fan bases, histories, and he's actually got a really good CV, hasn't he? If you look at the amount of promotions he's had, the golden period he had at Bristol City, still very fondly remembered for that famous 14-15 team. And he's seen it already. He's coached and worked in the Premier League as well as an assistant to Howard Wilkinson at Sunderland. He's worked at QPR under Redknapp. He's worked at Birmingham under Redknapp. Obviously, then stepped on to become manager there as well. But I think you look at the job he did in difficult circumstances at Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Very solid job at Burnley pre Owen Coyle take him into the Premier League. Got a lot of those players in, including Graham Alexander, who went on to be Premier League regulars for them. So he's been at every level, and I think you're absolutely right. He's not only got the job because of sentiment, because of emotion, because he's a Cheltenham lad. He's got the job because he's exactly the type of manager Cheltenham needed in the situation they're in. But I don't think anybody in football could have had quite the impact in terms of the uplift he's given everyone just by turning up. That's been a massive part of it, and the fans are jubilant. During the Michael Duff title-winning season of League Two, there were no fans there, sadly. So the scenes that we've seen in recent games, the post-match celebrations after beating teams like Walsall and Bradford, have been up there with anything I've seen for Cheltenham in recent decades, let alone recent years.
Well, 1887 have got a banner out there for Steve Cotterill, so that just shows how loved he is around those parts. I think we've spoken about 2 of the big USPs of this Cheltenham squad: Arkle, Jude Boyd, and Ethan Archer. Another one I think would be Jordan Thomas, who started the season injured. Maybe one factor behind the slow start to the campaign. 1 or 2 comments that since he's come back, you can tell that he's still nursing a bit of an injury. Has he shown signs of sort of finding full fitness and sharpness?
Yeah, he had a bit of an injury hit pre-season, came back near the start of the season and was fit. Then he had the freak injury where he collided with Luke Young and injured his shoulder quite badly, and that was a real blow, because there were real blow for him in particular, because there was some serious interest in him during the transfer window, including Barnsley. Since he's come back, he's been eased back into it, came off the bench against Gillingham, and then was thrown back into the starting lineup. And one thing I've noticed is he's been forced to play with a bit more discipline under Steve Cotterill. He hasn't really got the freedom that I would say he had under Michael Flynn. Him and Archer, I think they've got to play more of a team role now. Mm-hmm. So I think he's not able to be as random as he was before. But I think Cotterill will see the ability and the talent that he's got. I think he'll still harness that, but I think he's making him fit into what the 4-3-3 needs to be. So that's been quite interesting. I think he's going to have to learn quite quickly, but I'm very confident he'll be a much better player as a result of it, because got to remember, he's still a very young Football League player, isn't he, Jordan Thomas? He only broke into the team a few games into last season. He sort of scored that double away at Colchester, and before that he couldn't get into Darryl Clark's team in League One. He'd only really had 1 start, I think, before that. So he quickly went to become one of Cheltenham's main men. But I still think he's got a lot of developing to do. But he's got all the ability, he's got unbelievable ability, and I think Cotterill will set him up to go higher It's just a case of when he will. I think he will play higher, especially with Cottrell, breathing down his neck in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to ask you about Jake Bickerstaff, John, because there's definitely been people who have spoken to who have seen Cheltenham under Cottrell who have maybe said centre forward is the one area that you'd look at and think, could we find somebody else in January maybe? I mean, I saw Bickerstaff actually in pre-season in the game against Swansea, and I thought he was excellent. So I'm wondering, do you think that he can do a really important job in facilitating the goal scoring potential in the likes of Ethan Archer, Jordan Thomas, and Isaac Hutchinson?
Definitely. So the game you saw him in was interesting, wasn't it? Because it was like a trial for a loan, and he did make a good impression that night. And you look at the goal that beat Walsall, and that doesn't happen without Bickerstaff's endeavour and chasing what looked like it might have been a lost cause, getting to the byline, delivering for Taylor. Taylor shot blocked, and then it was a bit of a freak smash against Aidan Flint's head, and it ends up in the net. But that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Bickerstaff's energy and work rate. So I can see why Steve Cottrell likes him in that centre forward role. He's not the biggest. He's certainly not somebody that gets pushed around easily. But he's not what you call a natural target man. But it's his work rate, the amount of distance that he covers, and very selfless player for the team. But you're right. When Cottrell came in, he brought in Stevenson pretty quickly. He brought in Tompkinson then also pretty quickly, and he did say if there's going to be another signing before the January window, if there's going to be another free agent, it would be a centre forward. But obviously very, very hard to come by. But I think that is undoubtedly going to be one of his priority areas in January. But I think he'll be looking to strengthen pretty much all over the pitch in terms of there'll be a lot of comings and goings, I think, in January. But Bickerstaff can hold his head high with what he's done, even though his goals column might not have been affected yet. He's been really good team player, and he's endeared himself to the fans for that reason, really.
Throwing it forward then, John, do you think that the good start under Cottrell and a lot of the confidence Cheltenham fans feel about staying up without taking anything for granted, of course, still a long way to go and still a difficult position, but definitely the picture's looking a lot brighter. Do you think the fan base find it easier now to embrace a lot of the positivity and optimism under Mike Garlick's ownership regime and the opportunity that can bring to the club in the long term?
Yeah, I think it would have been a real shame if Cheltenham had got sucked into trouble and gone down this season with Garlick now at the helm. I don't think that would have been what he would have wanted at the start of his reign, trying to get Cheltenham back into the Football League. I think this season, and Steve Cottrell will have other ideas about this, but this season is all about stabilising after a bit of a chaotic period when in my opinion, and we've discussed this before, some poor decisions were made. I think everything's in place now with the manager, with the owner, with the feel-good factor, with the connection with the fans being back, and I'm not hammering Michael Flynn there, that's for sure. I think it's very difficult circumstances that he worked in, and fans will have their own ideas of what they think of him as a manager, but I think he's very much in a difficult scenario. But I think with Cottrell now driving it, with Garlick's potential to invest, I think next season will be an exciting one. I'm not saying that Cheltenham are suddenly going to go to become title contenders overnight, but I think there's going to be a competitive League Two budget, which they haven't really had even when they won the league under Michael Duff. It was one of the more modest budgets in the division, and staying in League One was a great achievement with the budget they had. So I think Mike Garlick will be sensible, but he will help Steve Cottrell. I think Steve Cottrell knows how to put a team together. So I think this season, anything around the mid-table area will be absolutely superb, and then I think next season there will be progress, or the potential for progress. And with Steve Cottrell's attitude and the way that he is, I just can't see the club standing still under his management, with Mike Garlick to support him and give him what he needs within reason at the right times.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully a bit of excitement and optimism around the corner for Cheltenham Town. Thanks for talking to us, John, and look forward to catching up with the coffee scene.
Thanks a lot, Gab. Always a pleasure. Cheers.
Top man. Delighted to be joined now by my next guest, which is Ed Bridges from 1912 Exiles. Ed, thanks for waiting. Slightly delayed this evening, so I appreciate you sticking around. A little bit like what we've spoken about with Shrewsbury at the top of the show. A little bit of a turnaround for Newport County. Are you slightly more hopeful than you were before the season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, no one's counting any chickens just yet, but October, we said right at the start of the season, October was going to be the critical month at the end of which we would start to get a sense of how good or how bad is this Newport County team. We'd had a really tough start to the season, which I think a lot of us are kind of priced in. We had a new manager with a very young squad of players, and the fixture computer was not kind to us. We played a lot of the fancied teams early on, and it was difficult for us to gain any sort of consistency. But we went into October looking at it and saying, well, we played games against Accrington, Cheltenham, and Harrogate. So, three of the teams who at the start of that month were down there struggling with us. And two of those we won. We went to Accrington and got a 1-0 win. We went to Harrogate and smashed them 3-0. The fly in the ointment, and it comes back to what you were just saying to John, was Cheltenham, who, when we played them on the 18th of October, were the only team in the whole league lower than us. But they were just hitting that Steve Cottrell bounce.
You played them at like the worst possible time.
Yeah, and they dispatched us relatively easily, 2-0. And I think there was a lot of hand-wringing, including from the podcast. I put my hands up after that result. But I think in retrospect, we got to the end of October. Not only did we get 6 points out of 9 against teams down at the bottom with us, we also got a morale-boosting victory at Cardiff in the Football League Trophy, and got a win on the 1st of November against Gillingham in the FA Cup. So I think we're now looking at it and saying, well, if you take that Cheltenham result out of the equation and say that was probably a unrepresentative game in a lot of ways, actually things aren't as bad as we thought. The only caveat, I suppose, is that even with that cup win against Gillingham on Saturday, we haven't won a league game at Rodney Parade since March. We didn't win a league game at Rodney Parade for the whole time that it was British summertime. Now the clocks have gone back. So, it's been a long time. And of course, because that's where most fans watch their football, it does start to accrue. And so I think there is pressure on the team to get a league win. But despite a lot of gnashing of teeth, I think we're in a better place now than we were a month ago, for sure.
Yeah, I suppose in that spirit of positivity, one thing that does stand out to me is the talent in that midfield diamond. Specifically, Sammy Braybrook on loan from Leicester City. He looks like a very progressive prospect with Kai Whitmore obviously at the base. Yeah,
so we had struggled, I think, to find a way to get the best out of the midfielders that we had, and to some extent the defenders as well. And perhaps partly through just having to constantly experiment and keep trying things. Fair play to Dave Hughes as the manager. He's not been dogmatic. He has experimented and tried different things. And eventually we've hit on this diamond, as you say, with Sammy Braybrook, the Leicester Iniesta, he's really clicked now. I mean, he is not going to be at Newport County after January. I don't think. He will get recalled and probably find his way higher up the pyramid. But we will cling to him for as long as we can, because he's the real bit of class that is in there. But what Braybrook does is he then allows Kai Whitmore, who is a very different sort of player. He's exciting, but in a very different way. He's a bit rawer. He will make mistakes, but he can also produce some magic. And in the same way that Braybrook is the kind of beating heart of that midfield, Whitmore is the creative one, who I've always thought he is the one that Hughes needs to play well to unlock what we're going to do. So we've been getting the best out of Braybrook and Whitmore, and then around them, the other ones have started to kind of fall into place. And that diamond, it seems to me, is now clicking. And what that does as well means that we're now playing with a consistent back four. We've kind of flitted between a 4 and a 5, and that seems to be falling into place. And again, results are starting to improve, but also the fact that we now have a system that works for us means we can start to build from that. And that's good news for the team. It's probably bad news for one or two individual players, people like Bobby Camwell, who maybe don't fit into that system, but we've got to find a way that works for the team as a whole now. And I think that's where we're starting to find ourselves.
I think the start to the season sort of encapsulates the high risk, high reward approach adopted by Hugh Jenkins, because if this season goes right, the rewards will be enormous, because you'll come out of it with 3 or 4 big assets in the summer, and Newport County have to be a selling club because Hugh Jenkins isn't actually enormously wealthy. He's got a bit of money, but he's not like he's not a sugar daddy. So you need need to sell. Newport County have to sell players because you're not going to survive on gate receipts. So developing players is great, but on the other side of that, there is this feeling that with so many young players, and I'm looking at the 11 that for the last league game now, you've only really got the experience of Courtney Baker-Richardson in terms of League Two proven. I do think that creates a challenge because with young players, when they have one setback, the Jenga tower can often fall, and it's difficult to then regain any kind of solidity and have people saying it's okay, just keep doing the right things, because they don't have that sort of maturity. So on the one hand, this could go really well. And if the patience and persistence is rewarded with developing these young players, and on the other side, you think, oh, this is risky.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think most fans are kind of on board with the theory and the principle of that. But in reality, when you are losing games and you go so long without a home win, inevitably and understandably and to an extent rightly, people question it. And it was interesting, the conversation you were just having with John from Cheltenham, him saying that Ben Stevenson has been their best player in the last month. He was one on the free agents list who County fans were looking at the end of August and into September going, I'd have him, experienced fourth division grafter in a position we need in central midfield. And I was gutted
and
to see him
technically gifted as well,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he
yeah.
can fit into the way that you play. So
and I think we are looking at the squad we've got now, and we are still saying, particularly if the likes of Braybrook go back in January, we do need to spend money on not loads, but just one or two. Rumours are, and I think they're fairly well-established rumours, that there is an investor either already on board but not yet announced, or about to be announced. And so I think we're not going to see mega bucks being thrown at it, but one or two signings of real experience and quality is all I think it needs to elevate this young squad into the position that we need. And you're absolutely right. For this system to work, yes, we do need to sell on a couple of players every season to make it financially wash its face, but we also need to be finishing seasons stronger than we're starting them, so that we actually sell some more season tickets. Because that's my big worry, is even if we stay up by the skin of our teeth this season, if we finish the season like we did last year and the year before, where we have 7 or 8 runs of defeats at the end of the season, we are going to start to see a real impact in numbers coming through the gate, and that's where it gets sticky for Hugh Jenkins.
Can I just ask you on that, Ed? Obviously, you've had 2 sort of successful teams since coming up in 2013, and the 18-19 side and the 2021 side that both got to the playoff final. Obviously, 2021 was behind closed doors, but when you have had good teams, have you found it easier to get fans through the gates and pack out Rodney Parade, or has it still been that challenge of it's a rugby area and it's hard to get people into football? Sorry if I don't mind.
Gav, you're going to be in trouble next time you come to South East Wales. No, I mean, I think it is the case now that Newport has well and truly got behind its football team. I think probably if you went back 20 years, that would have been the case, that the football team was struggling. But since we've been back in the league, our crowds are equivalent to, if not slightly better than, what the Newport Dragons get in. They're obviously going through their own difficulties at the moment, with the Welsh Rugby Union slimming down from 4 professional teams to 3, although it looks as though they will survive the cull. But
I'll confess, I'm actually I'm slightly surprised by that. Put my hands up there, because I've always, maybe a bit lazily of me, I always think of the stereotype of Wales as of being a bit more of a rugby nation than a.
Well, I think if you look at Wales's recent history, rugby is the national game. But actually, if you look at what people turn up and pay their money to go and watch on a Saturday afternoon, it is football. And Newport has done very well. The successes of the cup runs in particular have helped, although the playoff finals have been very good as well in that regard. And also the club's community outreach guys in county and the community are amongst the best in the country, really, when it comes to making connections in the community. And so that generation of kids that didn't have a local team to support in the 90s when we were in exile, that you're now seeing that flowing back in. And so crowds are healthy, but the difference between coming and watching a team that is struggling for survival in the 4th division versus a side that is battling for promotion or getting good runs in the cup, that's the difference. And it's that I think that we need to get back, is having more to play for than just 22nd place every season.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be a little bit aspirational to try and feel like you've got something to aim for. I did want to ask you about Habib Agunai on loan from Manchester United. How's he getting on? Because he's on paper quite an exciting acquisition, but I'm wondering whether it's played out that way in reality.
Yeah, he's, as is often the case, you get a kid on their first loan and they look a little bit green, a little bit lightweight, but he has really started to hit his stride now. He is quick. He's one of those who can get on the end of his own crosses. He's so fast. And he can cross a ball in as well. And physically, he looks up to the task, and he's improving with every game. He is another one who you think, are we going to keep him for the whole season? But he has, there's stiff competition for that right back position. He came in with Joe Thomas, Cam Evans ahead of him. We brought in Liam Shepherd as well, although he's been out injured. But none of them have been able to wrestle the shirt off Habib Agunai. And I think he's been really, really first class. I've been very impressed by him. He's exciting, gets the ball, you get out your seat, because, he will take on players. You can tell he's got the technical ability you would expect from someone at the Man United Academy, but he can mix it as well. So, he has been a real highlight. Him and Braybrook, and to a lesser extent, Nathan Opoku, have been definitely the standout loan signings of the season.
Sounds encouraging. From that point of view then, Ed, if Newport were to get the right one or two additions in January, especially in terms of experience, would you be reasonably confident that you're going to have what it takes to pull into a fairly comfortable position, or do you think you're going to be in, dicing with death for the remainder?
I think it depends very much on who comes in, and also who of those loan signings we can keep. I think Braybrook, we probably are not expecting to keep for the whole of the season, but can we replace him with someone of equal quality? Can we add to it? I think that for me, the gap will be that we will need someone who can be that midfield enforcer. I think it's something we've talked about before. And we also desperately need, especially with the system we're now playing, we need to have a target man who can score goals. Courtney Baker-Richardson, he's having a little bit of a resurgence after a poor start to the season, but we've got to get someone who could score some goals, because at the moment we are a little bit shot shy. That 3-0 at Harrogate was wonderful, but an outlier in terms of our ability to score goals.
Do you know what? I might actually bring in Neil Hurst, my Harrogate Town fan.
I knew you were going to do that then. I knew you were going to do that.
Neil, what did you make of Newport County at Harrogate Town?
Good evening, Ed. Look, when you get blasted 3-0, you've got to take your hats off to them. I thought Newport looked really good. I really like the number 44 you keep talking about, Braybrook. I'd also call out, I'm saying he was the left back. He looked like he was playing left back, but he looked totally to be a centre back. Thomas, I think it was called.
Yeah.
He looked like he needed filling out a bit, and I think a little bit green at times, but he looked like a lad full of potential. But no, I was quite taken aback by either how good you were, or possibly more likely how bad we were. I think the other thing I would add as well is when I looked at the formation of you and I looked at us. One of, I think, our biggest problems are we are so readable, we're so predictable. Weaver is picking exactly the same formation every time, which is kind of always with two sitting midfielders. When I saw yours on the BBC website and I saw this, I'm going to call it a funny diamond, but with like bits on the end, and that came from left field, and I just don't think we could have coped with it at all. So I thought it was really good of Newport to come away from home, certainly in the league table where you are. I thought it was really ballsy, really brave of you, and you got what you deserved. Totally got what you deserved.
Well, if it's any consolation to you, Neil, when most Newport fans saw that 11 and were guessing at the way that it was lining up, there were a lot of WhatsApp groups that I'm in that were saying, "What on earth is he doing here? Is this a plea to the chairman that we desperately need reinforcements?" Or a lot of us looked at that lineup and thought we would have been on the receiving end of a 3-0 defeat, and not you guys. And it is to Dave Hughes' enormous credit that he picked that side, went as bold as he did, and yeah, I think it's paid off. And I think you're right. It was a little bit of us being innovative and playing well. I think you also had a massive off day, but seasons turn on those sorts of results.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Ed, thanks so much for talking to us, and all the best for the rest of the season, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Great stuff. Well, Neil, I suppose you kind of touched on it there when it comes to Harrogate Town. A lot of continuity. You could look at it one way and say, and I often call for managers to do this, have a clear identity, a clear way of doing things, a set formation, and there's actually a lot in that I like. And I think that can show the value of patience and maybe not changing too much too soon. And also, I suppose from your point of view, maybe you would feel like you're wanting a little bit more in terms of flexibility and adaptability. So it depends which way you look at it, I suppose.
It does. And yeah, I suppose what I'm going to say now is kind of contradictory, because he's kept this same formation. And to your point, if it was working, you'd argue that whole idea, that theme of continuity would be a good thing. But October's been an absolute horror show for us. So again, perhaps to his credit, what Weaver has done in the game against Newport, what he did was there was wholesale changes. Players that you would ordinarily be a shoe-in to play, like Belshaw, like O'Connor, perhaps Bryn Morris, Ellis Taylor, all those loads of players got dropped for that Newport game.
Yeah.
Because in the preceding games, there have been quite a few individual errors and not a great team performance. So he did change it, and I think that's to his credit. He didn't change the formation; he changed the personnel, but it really didn't work. And yeah, it was a total horror show against Newport. But I could point back to other games in October: Crewe, Fleetwood, Colchester, Newport. We didn't win. Now I think about it, we didn't win a league game in October at all. And 3 of those 4 games we went 1-0 up. And the other point I was going to get onto, there seems at the moment a fragility about Harrogate. They almost look psychologically damaged at the moment, and even going 1-0 up doesn't kind of appease any fears. They still don't look comfortable.
There was it might have been the Newport game where Bradbury, it was Bradbury was skinned by the right-sided forward, and then Faulkner scored the own goal. And it's sort of like, you've gone from having that defensive reliability where whatever happens elsewhere on the pitch, you've got Anthony O'Connor, you've got I can't remember who was Jasper Moon last season?
Really good.
And so you had that. So whatever happened elsewhere on the pitch, you had that reliability. And now I'm looking at Bobby Faulkner and Tom Bradbury, and I'm thinking, are you going to provide that same degree of security, I suppose?
Yeah, and I think the short answer is no. If you gave me the choice of last season's centre-back pairing that you talk about there, O'Connor and Moon, versus what we have today, which is 2 of 3 of Bradbury, Faulkner, who's on loan from Doncaster, and O'Connor. I picked last season's every day of the week. Don't get me wrong, Faulkner's been good, but again, he's not the biggest centre back at all. He's brave as a lion. Jesus, the boy will put his head in anywhere. But he doesn't have the grace, I don't think, that Moon had at all.
Yeah. Why is O'Connor injured? Just
I think he got dropped. Well, no, I think he did get dropped. He was on the bench against Newport, and you've seen me at the ground. You know where I stand. I'm right by the dugout, and the lad was warming up about that far away from me, and he had a face like thunder. Well, he wasn't a happy boy.
Right.
He wasn't a happy boy. So yeah, dropped.
Right. Okay. Interesting. That does surprise me. I'm not privy to what goes on day to day, or I've not been to watch Harrogate Town every week, but that does surprise me from the outside that Anthony O'Connor and James Belshaw, because Belshaw has been on the bench, hasn't he? So
I mean, if you look back early October, there were some errors of O'Connor and to some degree Belshaw as well. He's not been at his best, and I'm being mega critical here. If he's a 10 out of 10 most weeks, he's only been at an 8 or a 9, but he has made some errors. And Oxley, again, to be fair to him, he's come in and he's done a pretty good job as well.
Right.
So again, I don't know how it's working in training. Again, I'm like you, I'm not privy to all the detail. He might have a knock. I don't know all the detail, but seemingly, he's been dropped for the last few games.
Yeah, it's so I'm not coming at this so much from I'm always, in the position that I'm in, not watching games every week and also not going on knowing what goes on, training, whatever. I think it would be really dangerous for me to sort of say question selection from managers, because I think that would sort of probably cross a boundary. But I think the angle that I would come at this from, Neil, is I suppose from an outside point of view, I would like to see Harrogate Town have that continuity. And I was hoping that it would be, okay, you've lost Jasper Moon, but Tom Bradbury's going to come. So if you think of the last season's triumvirate of James Belshaw, Anthony O'Connor, Jasper Moon, whatever else happens on the pitch, those three are going to be brilliant. And you've got that security. I don't see that now, that O'Connor and Belshaw are dropped, even if their performances had dropped, because I sort of feel like you're kind of missing that, the known quantities, I suppose, and it throws more up in the air, I suppose, for me from that side point of view.
Totally. I totally agree with you. And in terms of the acquisition of Bradbury, when we signed him from Cheltenham, having seen him last season when the little bugger scored against us, I was chuffed. I thought he was a really good buy, and I thought he would slot in perfectly with O'Connor. I thought you said that triangle of goalkeeper and two centre backs would have been really, really strong.
And Michael Flynn wanted to keep him as well, by the way. So at Cheltenham, so that shows that it's a good signing. You're signing somebody who another League Two manager would have wanted.
Well, to keep, but for one reason or other, he's chosen to not feel Bradbury so much in favour of Bobby Faulkner. So again, it's like you say, it's difficult without being privy to all the details and seeing how they train. But it's worrying times, Gab. I mean, I rewind back to September, and there was wins. I can't remember, Gillingham, Shrewsbury.
The first couple of months,
the first game. Yeah, we took points off Grimsby and Cambridge, and everything was all go. But yeah, Jesus, October's been really, really bad, and I think I went to Fleetwood away. I went to that game, and the first half we played some really lovely stuff, really good possession-based stuff, really intricate passing. For October we were 1-0 up, and then second half, Ched Evans came on. I think he was a bit of a game changer, but just lost it, just lost all confidence. And I really think that the crux of all this is, and it was to some degree the same issue last season, is scoring goals, or the kind of the offensive threat. And I had talk about needing a striker. So we've still got an issue there. And I don't know whether this is really born out of the fact that our lineup always has two defensive midfielders, which kind of takes away that offensive balance. But if it's not for long distance shots from Duke McKenna,
McKenna's been the one standout.
He has been
really good.
He has. I think I'd add Reece Smith to that as well. The number 10 sitting off the striker. He's looked good as well.
Would you describe Reece Smith to me? Because he's not someone I'm as familiar with yet.
Would I describe him?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
How would you describe him? Technically very good with the ball at his feet. He lifts his head up. To look at him, he doesn't look particularly strong, but he keeps hold of the ball. He can take a League Two battering really well. He's consistent every game. He's a good kind of 8, 9 out of 10. And he works well with the other players. I think other people within the squad have kind of come in and come out in games as the games have gone by, but he's consistent. And he's been, I think, in reflecting that, he's played pretty much every minute of every game this season as well.
Well, nice to have that sort of bright spot. I think the centre forward issue, I think it's partly that, and I did want to come on to the midfield, but I also think with the injury issues to Mason Bennett, who was the one that I'd pinned a lot of hope on, because it's like when you sign someone who's played in the Championship for a long period of time, that's obviously quite an exciting thing, right? Yeah. But actually, when he's spending a lot of the time out injured, and Sean Mikulski, who you'd got from Maidenhead, you seem to like shopping at Maidenhead. It's like John Lewis for you.
It is. It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Yes, and he's had one or two injuries, hasn't he? So
Yes.
That's the challenge.
He has, but I mean, Muldoon, to be fair to him, he's chipped in with a fair few goals himself this season. Whether it's going to be enough to sustain us, I think is yet to be seen. You know, I'm sure he'd admit it. He's in the autumn of his career, but scoring goals is a worry, and it's not even just the centre forward. It's the players behind him in those three positions behind him that are finding the ball and finding the offensive quality to threaten the opposition. Yeah, I'm normally pretty upbeat when I speak to you, Gab, but I'm really concerned. I'm worried about the fact that the two teams in the bottom two, we've lost to both of them, Crawley and Newport. Yeah, and looking forward, we've got Oldham this weekend coming, but after that, I think the three teams who play after that are all in the top half. Yeah, exactly. I'm waiting for the break in the clouds, but it's not showing any signs of coming at the moment.
Yeah, tough one at the moment. I did want to ask you about, central midfield, Neil, because second half of last season it was like Bryn Morris and Ben Fox, and they're two physical midfielders, not enormously mobile, but they are industrious. And I suppose one of the reasons I imagine that you brought in Jack Evans is because he is a very energetic lad who's maybe brings a bit more of that dynamism, maybe someone who you'd feel like can blend the midfield and attack a little bit differently to the way you might be able to if Bryn Morris was in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, from your point of view, you still feel like it's a little bit conservative.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just on the lad Evans, he is a bundle of energy. He is arguably the most mobile midfielder I've seen in Harrogate's ranks ever. He really does have a good engine up and down. When last January transfer window, when we brought in Fox and Bryn Evans, I'm totally of the belief that Bryn Morris, I beg your pardon. I'm totally of the belief that those purchases saved our season. It totally revolutionised things.
Yeah.
But I think, irrespective of the personnel you put in those positions, if you're going to play that formation where you've got two holding midfielders, it's at the detriment of the attacking play. And if, again, this is just my opinion, but if we've alternated it slightly, so for example, Newport at home, if you would have said Newport at home, look at their run, look where they are in the league, I'm just going to play one holding midfielder today and go a little bit more, but it's not. And the lineup every week is exactly the same, not personnel, but formation, pretty much. It's the same. It's the same deal, and I don't think it does them any favors. I think they're easy to predict what's going to happen and to come up with a counter plan.
So do you think it could work with, let's say, try and play Ellis Taylor and Reece Smith in the 10 spots, or would there be a different way of making it work?
I suppose what I was saying before is, I think you've got to tailor this depending on the opposition. If you're playing one of the big boys right up at the top, two holding midfielders, I totally understand that. But to just wholesale do that every single game, it just doesn't seem to make sense for me or to me at all. So no, I'd like to see him play two up front.
Okay.
Not necessarily all the time, but or even a 4-4.
I mean, have you got two fit strikers though?
Well, yeah. I guess the point is we have had at some point. Yeah. We might not necessarily have that.
Maybe McCallany might be able to.
Yeah, and he's kind of. He's a striker-ish, isn't he? He's
certainly inside forward kind of thing, isn't he? Yeah.
He's certainly not had a chance at that centre forward role. He's not.
I think Muldoon is as well. I don't think Muldoon would consider himself an out-and-out striker.
Totally with you. Totally with you on that. But you've got to play the cards that you dealt. But I think it's a good point you raise. He's clearly not doing it now because he's not necessarily got the striking personnel. But my point was earlier on in the season he did.
Yeah. Well. I think probably the centre forward position, I imagine that's going to be a big priority going into January. I think it's going to be for a lot of teams that we've discussed this evening.
They don't grow on trees, Cap, do they?
No, exactly. They cost a fair penny, don't they now? what's your gut tell? You were quite you actually sort of you're like a car salesman when I spoke to you in the summer, Neil, convincing me on Harrogate Town. I think you talked me into predicting you to stay up.
I remember it, and I look at all the purchasing. I was so happy, and I was genuinely stoked for a best season ever. It's just not coming to pass, and I'm worried. I'm more worried about what's going on up here with the players. You just look properly fragile. Yeah. Players that have been through it before just look worried. You're making me go all Scouse. Like, these questions are making me go all Scouse. It's it's worrying, but Weaver's been there for a long time. There's definitely been some boos in the crowd of late. I'm not at that stage yet, personally. I think he's got to be afforded the time to get it right. He's proven, he's got us up there and he's kept us up there. He needs to be afforded the chance to get this right.
Oh, 100%. I just always feel like Harrogate Town are at their best when they've got the fundamentals in place. I think any team that's true, but certainly for Harrogate Town, the disadvantage is that you're at this level. You need that core of players in place that you can look to first and say, yes, I can rely on you. And I'd like to see that become re-established quite soon. An important few weeks coming up for the Salisbury Rights. Neil, thanks so much for talking to us, and look forward to catching up later in the season.
All right then, mate. Lovely to speak to you. Take care, Gab.
Likewise. Cheers, Neil. Thanks to all my guests this evening. John Palmer from Gloucestershire Echo, Ed Bridges from 1912, Callum Gibson from the Raw Milk fanzine, and Jack Groom of Shrewsbury Town Shrews Analysis, and Neil Hurst as well. Thanks for joining us as well, and we'll see you again for another League Two podcast next week.